Hi, I'm Afua Nkanta Samoa, and we're continuing Climate Action Live 2022, broadcasting live from the Peace One Day headquarters here in London. Next, should the Universal Declaration of Human Rights include a right to a healthy environment? This could be a game changer. And our next panel, Healthy Environment, a Human Right, which I am very excited to be moderating, will be exploring that question. So, welcome to this panel. We will be considering the importance of the right to a healthy environment as a human right. To discuss all of this, I am delighted to welcome Rick Dames, who is the president of the Network of Contact Parliamentarians for a Healthy Environment, the Parliamentary Assembly Council of Europe. Dr. R. Boyd, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Environment. Harry Lamy, who is the head of Environment Project at the Tina and Auntie Helen Foundation. And finally, Elizabeth Watuthi, who is the Kenyan environmentalist and climate activist and the founder of the Green Generation Initiative. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to your contributions and thoughts on actions required to respond to the current environmental challenges. This is needed to make progress with international commitment towards the achievement of the UN Agenda 2030 for sustainable development and the importance of multilateral cooperation. So my first question goes to Mr. Dames. As a politician and former president of the Parliamentary Council, the Parliamentary Assembly for the Council of Europe, you have been strongly advocating for a paradigm shift from environment as policy to environment as a human right. Why do we need to ensure that environment as a human right is embedded in a legally binding standards? What will be the benefits of this?
Well, to put it in a very simple way, the moment the healthy environment is embedded in the European Convention of Human Rights as a human right, it basically becomes binding to all governments. And to put it in a very simple way, it will allow more than 600 million European citizens to go to court, to the court in Strasbourg, to hold accountable the governments if they do not do what they are supposed to do in order to protect the environment. So it is a legally binding instrument. You have to abide with it, provided that they would agree on it. And then any citizen can go to court and just force governments to do what they are not doing at this stage, by the way.
Thank you. So I want to take this question a bit further and allow Dr. Boyd to give us his perspective and thoughts. We know that in October the 8th of 2021, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution recognizing the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. Dr. Boyd, can we expect this resolution to be effectively integrated into international law, or will this just remain another resolution on the critical issue of climate change?
Yes, well, I understand that some people are skeptical about United Nations resolutions, but let me give you one example of how they can make a profound difference in our world. Back in 2010, for the first time, the United Nations recognized that there is a fundamental human right to water and sanitation. And that resolution was a catalyst for a cascade of changes, including countries that changed their constitutions, their highest and strongest laws, in Costa Rica, Fiji, Mexico, Slovenia, Tunisia, and others. Other countries changed their legislation to incorporate the right to water, from Colombia to France. And most importantly, governments took accelerated action to fulfill that legal commitment to respect people's right to water. So, for example, in Mexico, after they put the right to water in their constitution, the Mexican government has delivered safe drinking water to more than 1,000 rural communities in Mexico. In my country of Canada, when we recognized the right to water, that was a spark that led to our government working with more than 130 indigenous communities to deliver on that commitment to fulfill their right to safe water. So the recognition of the right to a healthy environment by the United Nations is a very powerful antidote to the global environmental crisis in which we find ourselves.
Thank you so much. From the two answers, we've heard the political and the policy perspectives, but what exactly is at stake for the private sector, the non-profit organizations, the research organizations and other institutions? Why is it important for them to have the environment established as a human right? So we turn to Mr. Lamy. A question for you now. The Tina and Auntie Helen Foundation, which you represent, believes in catalyzing change through collaboration. And what is the motivation for the foundation's strong focus on the environment and the future of our planet?
So my starting point here is really to kind of look at the current situation, which sort of almost goes unnoticed in many countries. This is that millions of people already die from air pollution today, or misuse of water resources, making wide areas not suitable for farming, forcing millions of people out of areas. And these are just regional impacts of local pollution. And now already climate change is threatening to convert whole regions inhabitable. Both because of heat and fires, but also lack of water, and threatening our food system and basically the whole civilization as we know it. And this puts livelihood and homes of hundreds of millions at risk. And if this would be caused by a conflict, such a devastation would be considered a horrible crime, even a genocide. So this is really very much a question of violating basic human rights and should be considered as such. Yet, in our policymaking, the voice of the people affected is not really heard. That much is evident. And people who make the decision today are not really impacted by their choices, even if their children will be. And evidently, the voice of the young generation who will be living in a different world compared to our really different planet compared to ours, their voice is not decisive in the decision making. And the Anti-Hurling Foundation really wants to support solutions on climate, but also the voices of civil society as a crucial part of it. And we want to support promote the voice of the people who are impacted now, but also the voice of people who are impacting the future when we make decisions about their future. And this, of course, is to support the local climate movements, NGO movements in their work to challenge the policies in the countries like Finland, where I'm based, but also we've been supporting and thinking about groups who are suing governments and companies for lacking on environmental action, and this is important. And even in this panel, I think that we have a little bit of predominance of middle-aged males here, and I think it's really important we have voice of the groups which are more directly impacted. And not only support the voice, but actually have their voice strengthened as a structure to have impact in policymaking. And this is also supported by voice of scientists and NGOs. So basically, we have fairly good examples from science panels in Nordic region for improving policy debate. But in the end, it comes back to the value choices between policies, and there the weight of non-action or weight of cost of action is higher in policymaking than the cost of doing the change. And this is why we think that it's important to have this group of what I would say structurally enabled voice of impacted people or young generations as a future commissioners or part of supporting the legal cases against governments when they're lacking in their action, to kind of really push governments to fulfill environment as a human right.
Oh, thank you so much for that. We'll now want to move a bit more to the youth perspective. A survey across 10 countries in 2021 shows that 60% of young people interviewed were very worried about climate change, and they felt betrayed and let down by the government's failures to act and take adequate measures. In response, young people are taking action to influence global effort and make real change, and that have a meaningful impact. And one of those young people is Miss Elizabeth Watuthi. Elizabeth, can you please tell us about the incredible work that you're doing? But can you start from the work that you're doing in your home country?
My work in climate activism has mostly been through championing for biodiversity and nature protection, but also working directly with frontline communities that are impacted by the climate crisis. I happen to have come from one of the most forested regions in Kenya that gave me an opportunity to have a personal interaction and a relationship with the natural world. And this made me love nature and connect to nature at a very young age. And so it has helped me understand that when we are connected to what's around us, to people, to the community, to our planet, then we're able to step up and fight for what is really important at that moment. And so for the past few years, I have been running the Green Generation Initiative, which I founded back in 2016 to get children to love nature, but most importantly, to create a generation of environmentally conscious individuals who will stand up for the right things and also who will fight for the future of the planet as well, because right now the climate crisis is greatly impacting so many young people and especially the children, and it is them who are going to have to live longer with the consequences of the decisions that are being made today. So they should be the ones that are able to shape that kind of future and the world that they want to live in. And so part of the work that we have been doing at the Green Generation Initiative has been a whole huge focus on biodiversity and nature, because the world right now is so much disconnected from our surrounding. But getting children to be able to clean their own air, to grow their own food, and to green their own school compounds is one thing that I think helps them also appreciate what surrounds them. And also, having come from a country where people have to also pay a fee to access some of the green spaces, it means it's important that the children are able to create their own spaces around their schools. And one of the campaigns that we started with was a campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign, to get every child in every school in my country to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound. And also, most importantly, understanding the fact that food insecurity is one of the key rising impacts of the climate crisis that is also greatly impacting the African continent and even greatly impacting my country, and especially in northeastern part where people are still facing the prolonged drought. And so being able to help children grow trees that also are going to help them with something nutritious like the fruits is really important for us at the initiative. And also this has been helping them to pick designated corners in the school compounds and then plant mixed species of fruit trees. And this has helped us also make sure that these kids can continue to grow passionately, appreciating what surrounds them, but also they are able to use that same experience to shape the world around them, to shape their communities, and eventually to use their voices to make a difference, to get everyone else to take action. Because the work that we are doing with the children in itself is not enough if everyone else is not taking the much bigger steps that they are supposed to take to help tackle this crisis. And I've also been working with frontline communities, and just the past few months ago, I have been visiting communities that have been impacted by the drought situation in northeastern, a community like Wajir County, where 80% of their livelihoods directly comes from their livestock. But being able to visit these communities, listening to their stories of how the drought situation is affecting them and how they're losing their livestock in the process. And as a result, the children also are not able to continue going to school because they have to get children, and especially girls, out of school because there's no school fees for them to continue paying. So being able to use these stories and being able to be compelled to actually tell these stories through letting the whole world know what is happening through what I'm seeing and how this actually can help us also make bigger steps to make a difference is what has been really important for me on the ground. But I also strongly understand that this work in itself needs everyone else and the whole world to get behind it, because we need to make much bigger steps to be able to tackle this crisis and to be able to also help and give more hope to the frontline communities.